Speaking of the water ghost, it actually refers to a special group in engineering.
Few people do this job. The work is simple, the pay is high, but the risks are enormous. Either everything goes smoothly, or if something goes wrong, it's usually the end of the line.
With today's advanced technology, this special group has disappeared. But when John was young, he worked as a water ghost on construction sites.
Being a water ghost is like defying the natural order. For example, when a piling machine drives piles into the ground, sometimes the pile breaks halfway down, often at a depth of several meters. This indicates that the location is unsuitable for piling. Some say it might be due to poor pile quality, but people on the site often believe it's due to some taboo being violated.
Many who have worked as water ghosts rarely live to an old age. Generally, those who take on this job come from very poor backgrounds, like John.
My name is John Smith. I lost my parents at a young age and was raised by my grandfather. It wasn't until he was on his deathbed that he told me I was actually a foundling he had picked up by the roadside.
After his grandfather passed away, John went to work as a laborer on construction sites. The pay was very low back then, about 1,000 yuan a month for a skilled worker. But John wasn't skilled and didn't know any techniques.
So, I thought about finding something else to do that could earn more money. Someone asked me if I wanted to be a water ghost, saying it paid well. Naively, I thought he genuinely wanted to help me make more money. Later, I realized it wasn't that simple.
The only requirement for being a water ghost is courage. John had seen water ghosts before. They put on protective gear and dive into slurry-filled drill holes, going several meters underground to retrieve the drill bit.
If the drill bit isn't retrieved, the hole is wasted, costing around 200,000 yuan. Hiring a water ghost to retrieve it costs about 20,000 yuan, making it more cost-effective.
Finally, John witnessed a water ghost at work. On the surface was a woman in her 20s, holding a rope. Her skin was exceptionally fair, and she had delicate features.
I was a bit dazed, wondering how such a beautiful woman could be a water ghost. I thought she must have been in a difficult situation.
The water ghost emerged after about half an hour. After removing the protective gear, John saw it was an older man, not yet 50. They looked like a father-daughter pair.
Earning 20,000 yuan so easily made me very tempted. I thought, I can do this too. But no one around me was willing to do it.
That night, John went to ask to be an apprentice. When he explained his intentions, the master, Michael Brown, looked at him.
You're not suited for this job. Go back.
Michael Brown came from a family of water ghosts for 3 generations, working once or twice a month. It seemed very easy to John at the time, and the money was good.
Master, my name is John. I want to be a water ghost. Please take me in. I'm from the countryside and can endure hardship. I can do it.
Michael, just take him in. The kid seems sincere. Besides, if you don't, your skill will be lost.
John turned to see the woman from the construction site, now wearing a cheongsam, her figure graceful.
From the side, she reminded me of a poem. From the front, a ridge. From the side, a peak. From afar, different heights. Her skin was exceptionally fair, and I almost drooled. She looked even more beautiful than on the construction site.
After some thought, Michael finally took John in.
John, I'll take you in, but you must listen to me in everything. I've observed you, your fate is too soft. Be very careful in this line of work. Get up and bow to your mistress. Without her speaking for you, I wouldn't have taken you in.
John was surprised to hear that this woman was his mistress. He always thought she was Michael's daughter.
Mistress? This woman was my mistress? I knelt before Sarah. She sat on a chair, one leg crossed over the other, making my heart race.
After the ceremony, Michael suddenly took out a silver needle and pricked John's brow bone. collecting a drop of blood into a container.
Master, what do you need a white rooster for?
Just do as I say, no need for so many questions.
The next day, John bought a white rooster from a nearby village and brought it over. He saw Michael working on a small object, eventually making 2 white jade pendants shaped like the rooster John bought, only much smaller, like tiny toys.
Master, is this a gift for me?
Stop talking nonsense. Bring me a knife.
John didn't understand.
Serious Robert took the kitchen knife and swiftly chopped off the chicken's head. The headless white rooster surprisingly ran around the yard a few times. Robert saw this and laughed. Cheerful, this is the kind of chicken we need, full of vitality, and it's still a young one. Serious then, he asked me to bring over the vessel that had my brow blood from the previous day. The drop of blood, after a night, was still bright red. It hadn't evaporated or dried up, which was quite strange. Robert then took the chicken's head and let its blood drip into the vessel. He placed 2 small objects into the vessel as well. Serious John, put this on the altar of the ancestor. In a week, I can take you out for some work. Excited, thank you, Robert, thank you. Cheerful, don't mention it. Stay for lunch today. Sarah is cooking that big rooster you brought, and we can have a drink. But remember, when we're working, no drinking. Serious, I knew Robert was reminding me to avoid mistakes, and I took his words to heart. A week passed like this. Robert took the 2 items from the altar and handed one to me. He tied a red string around it and hung it around my neck. When I held it in my hand, I noticed that the stone inside was a deep red, like fresh blood. Serious Robert didn't say anything, and I didn't dare to ask. After eating, Robert took Sarah and me to the construction site, saying there was a job. Serious this time, it was for building an overpass. The foundation piles under the bridge were having issues during the drilling process. For some reason, the drill bits kept breaking, even after several replacements. The worst part was that one of the drill bits had fallen into the pile hole, about 18 meters deep. Serious, 18 meters is quite deep, equivalent to the height of a 6-story building. Climbing up would be challenging, and drilling down would be even harder. The cement slurry was extremely cold, and anyone with weak legs might cramp halfway down, risking injury and losing the chance to earn money. Despite these challenges, the real danger was the potential for a collapse. If the hole collapsed, it would bury the person underground, leaving no chance for survival. This was the greatest fear for us, the so-called water ghosts. Serious Robert examined the site and the terrain, then lit 3 incense sticks for a ritual. I asked him who he was worshipping. Curious, who are you worshipping, Robert? Serious, it's a pre-work ritual. The spirits will see that we mean no harm and won't disturb us. Serious, I watched as Robert changed his clothes, and Sarah took out a coil of rope. One end of the rope was held by Sarah, and the other end had an iron hook. Robert wrapped the rope around himself twice and hooked it to his waist. After preparing, he jumped into the muddy pile hole. Worried Sarah, will Robert be okay? Reassuring, he'll be fine. Your master is experienced. If he says it's safe, it is. Hopeful Sarah, let me help you with the rope. Serious, I thought holding the rope seemed easy and didn't require much skill. Serious, not yet. You need to remember the number of times the rope shakes. If it shakes once, everything is normal. Twice means you can pull the rope up. Multiple shakes mean there's trouble. Serious, just as Sarah finished explaining, the rope started shaking violently. Terrified Sarah, the rope is moving. Serious eyes saw sweat forming on Sarah's forehead. Serious, this isn't good. Johnny, help me. Your master might be in trouble. Serious eyes stood behind Sarah, gripping the rope tightly. A faint fragrance from Sarah wafted over, making me feel entranced.
Strange. Why does the other end of the rope feel so heavy? Given the buoyancy of the mud, Robert's weight should be reduced. But now, pulling him up feels several times heavier. Sarah and I struggled to pull the rope backward. Finally, we saw Robert emerging, wearing his protective suit.
Johnny, quickly help pull your master up.
Once Robert was up, he was panting heavily. It was then that I noticed he was holding a drill bit weighing over 100 pounds. Master, what is this?
No choice, the drill bit was ruined, and the iron hook couldn't hold it. I had to carry it up.
Hearing his words, I was deeply moved. In our line of work, there's an unwritten rule. If there's no place to hook the drill bit, the diver would abandon it and take half the pay for the job. This is mainly to protect the diver's life. But now Robert had nearly risked his life for a drill bit.
We have to maintain some professional ethics, don't we? All right, enough talking. Let's go back and have a drink. Tonight has been exhausting.
After returning, I stayed at Robert's house and drank late into the night. I didn't go back home and just stayed over at his place. Time passed like this for a while. One day, it suddenly started raining heavily. The construction site halted work, and we had no jobs. Robert and I were idle at home. After the rain stopped, just after we finished eating, someone from the construction site came over. They said a pile had broken during the piling process and couldn't be retrieved, so they came to find Robert again. This time, they raised the price to $40,000. Master, did you hear that? $40,000. This is a substantial amount. Completing this job would mean we wouldn't need to take on any more work until the end of the year. Robert's expression was very serious, but I was thrilled. After all, it was a chance to earn money, and the new year was approaching. However, Robert didn't agree immediately. He went to the construction site to take a look first. Seeing the broken pile foundation, he said he wouldn't take the job. Master, why not? Do you know that if we take this job, we can rest for a longer period next year?
What do you know? There was an incident here before. Do you remember a while ago, a drill bit broke in this pile hole? Now the pile foundation is broken again. Something is definitely not right. We can't take this job.
Master, aren't you overthinking this? But Robert still pulled me away. As we left, I glanced at the contractor. Back home, I couldn't understand Robert's decision. Why give up this opportunity? I also had a premonition that the diving industry might become increasingly difficult. With the rapid advancement of construction equipment, if we didn't seize this last chance to earn some money, it would be impossible to make money in the future. I lay in bed thinking for a long time. I was almost 20 years old now, and my family was extremely poor. The reason I joined this line of work was to earn more money. As I thought about it, I suddenly wanted to do it myself. After all, I had been with Robert for quite some time and had learned a lot by observing. Why not take advantage of Robert's absence and do it secretly? But I can't do it alone. I need someone to pull the rope from above, someone I can absolutely trust. Otherwise, if the rope was let go, I would never come back up. I thought about it and realized that besides Robert and Sarah, there was no one else I could trust at the construction site. Should I give up this opportunity? The next morning, a knock on the door woke me up. I opened it to see the foreman from the construction site standing there.
I need your help. Can you come?
I knew instantly what he wanted.
I'm sorry, I can't help this time. Please find someone else.
I shut the door, feeling a mix of regret and resolve. The foreman didn't give up and offered me a cigarette.
I'll pay you more. How about 100,000?
No, I can't do it.
The foreman looked exasperated.
I can't believe it. Besides you guys, I can't find anyone else.
Finding someone to do underwater work was tough. On such a large site, only a few people could handle it. Later, I heard the foreman had found new workers and decided to see how they did the job. I watched as an old man and a young woman prepared for the task. The woman was about my age, but the man was quite old, probably around 60. I worried for his safety. Suddenly, the rope the old man was using started shaking violently. The woman looked anxious, and the workers around just stood there, not bothering to help.
As someone who did underwater work, I knew the dangers. I ran over to help her pull the rope.
Thank you, brother.
I didn't respond, just gripped the rope tightly. After a long struggle, we finally pulled the old man up. He was exhausted, barely hanging on.
Thank you so much, brother. My name is Emily, and this is my dad.
Your father is too old for this kind of work.
They hadn't retrieved anything, making the effort almost wasted. The foreman sneered.
Is this how you underwater workers do your job? None of you are any good. Don't expect a single penny.
I couldn't stand his bullying.
Hey, you can't say that. He deserves a day's wage.
Dream on. You didn't do the job, so you don't get paid.
According to our industry's rules, even if nothing was retrieved, a day's wage was still due. But this foreman was heartless. I grabbed his collar.
Don't push people too far. You know the industry rules. Their wage isn't much. How can you cheat them?
What, you want to fight?
I saw several workers surrounding me and got scared. Construction sites were very complicated places. If someone disappeared, they might never be found.
You think I'm scared of you just because you have more people?
The foreman knew my mentor, who was renowned in the area, so he didn't dare touch me.
Why are you acting tough with me? If you're so brave, go down and solve the problem. Compared to your mentor, you're nothing. If you don't have the guts, you should quit this job. You're a disgrace to your mentor.
Hearing this, I felt really upset. The tension in the air was palpable as John stood defiantly before Robert.
Who says I don't dare? I'll show you right now.
Robert had warned John about the dangers of the infusion pile hole. Though John remembered his words, he had long dismissed them. He couldn't stand Robert's disparagement of water ghost workers. They had no idea what it meant to be one. John's mind flashed back to his early days as an apprentice. Robert had him write a farewell letter.
Why do I need to write this, Robert?
The job of a water ghost is fraught with unexpected dangers. Without writing it in advance, you wouldn't know when an accident might happen. You must always be prepared for the worst.
From that moment, John realized that being a water ghost was like digging one's own grave, constantly struggling on the edge of life. Robert had gone through the same ordeal. These people had no clue about the hardships of this profession. John asked the girl to hold a rope for him as he descended into the well. Once down, he didn't notice any immediate issues, just a slow sinking sensation. Everything around him was a murky gray, making it impossible to see anything.
The pressure, it's increasing. I can't breathe.
Realizing the danger, John shook the rope to signal for help, but there was no response. Desperately, he pulled the rope hard, only to have it snap easily.
Is this the end for me?
At that moment, he remembered Robert's warning not to take this job. Regret was useless now. His breathing became more labored, and his body grew cold as his consciousness began to fade. Just as he was about to lose himself, a sharp pain pierced his forehead.
My mind, it's clearing.
John.
Sarah, I'm here.
He felt a pair of delicate hands gripping him tightly, and he clung to them. In that moment, he felt a soft, warm sensation. He was saved. Back on the surface, Robert didn't blame John. He simply advised him to take care, but he mentioned that the matter wasn't fully resolved.
You've sown the seeds of karma.
2 days later, John's body broke out in itchy red spots.
Could this be the karma Robert mentioned?
The next day, he noticed a patch of skin on his arm resembling snake scales. Alarmed, he went to see Robert again.
Robert, look at my skin!
Meeting me was our fate. Let's go.
Robert took John back to the construction site. Strange things had been happening since John's descent, and even the foreman had fallen ill with a rare skin condition. Robert observed the site for a long time.
The piling has disturbed a dragon's lair. Your descent has entangled you in this karma. To resolve it, we need to release the dragon's spirit.
Under the bridge, Robert found a bottomless pit.
This is the dragon's lair. We must guide the dragon's spirit to ascend.
He had John kneel by the pit for 3 days, but his condition didn't improve.
Robert, look at my skin.
It's not enough, we need to do more.
Robert spent a fortune on a stone pillar, carved with a dragon's head at the top and a tail at the bottom. They worked on it for 3 days and nights, carving a white dragon and a green dragon. Then, they had the pillar driven into the ground beside the pit. This effort cost Robert most of his earnings from being a water ghost.
Robert, I'm sorry.
I don't blame you. In this line of work, everyone has their fate. I might meet mine someday too.
After erecting the dragon pillar, it rained heavily that night. Robert told John he saw 2 beams of light, one white and one green, shooting into the night sky. He said John's karma was resolved. A few days later, John was completely healed, but Robert had aged significantly. A few days later, Emily came to see me.
John, I want to join you in your work. We've been through tough times together, and I think I can help.
While I wanted to take her in, I hesitated, unsure if she could be trusted. But needing a partner for future projects, I agreed temporarily.
All right, Emily. Let's give it a try. We'll see how it goes.
The next day, I took Emily to meet Robert. His condition seemed to be deteriorating. Sarah quickly started preparing a meal. After we ate, Robert pulled me aside.
John, you can work on your own now, but be cautious. You trust others too easily. Remember, it's not the supernatural that's frightening, but the human heart. Whether to take Emily in, that's up to you, it's part of your destiny.
I didn't understand why Robert said that at the time. After saying goodbye to him, I took on a few jobs at the construction site and made quite a bit of money. Each time I earned, I set aside a portion for Robert, as he could no longer work and had trouble covering his living expenses. After some time, Emily mentioned she wanted to visit her hometown.
John, I haven't been back to my hometown in a long while. I need to visit.
Take your time, Emily. I'll take a few days off too.
A few days later, Emily returned, and coincidentally, there was work available at the construction site again. However, I noticed the number of jobs was decreasing, and I realized that this line of work would eventually become obsolete. When we arrived at the site, the job didn't seem too difficult. I put on my protective gear and got ready. Suddenly, I felt the jade pendant around my neck turn icy cold.
What's happening today?
I also felt a slight pain in my forehead.
What's wrong, John?
Nothing, let's get to work.
I handed one end of the rope to Emily and wrapped the other end around myself. It was about lunchtime, and the construction site was nearly deserted. Besides Emily and me, everyone else had left. Once underground, I quickly used the hook to secure the drill bit and tugged on a rope. Emily felt the signal and started pulling me up. As I held onto the rope and began to ascend, I suddenly felt the other end go slack, and my body started to sink.
Something's wrong!
I couldn't call for help. I could only shake the rope frantically, even pulling the other end down. It dawned on me then, Emily had abandoned me.
Why would she do this?
As my body continued to sink, I felt a surge of life force and remembered Robert's words.
It's the human heart that's most frightening.
He was right.
At that moment, I finally understood. The most terrifying thing in this world is indeed the human heart.
Why, Emily? Why?
My body kept sinking. Was this the end for me? I recalled how the pendant around my neck had turned cold before I descended, a bad omen I had ignored.
I didn't know how long I had been down there. Surprisingly, I felt a sense of calm.
I remembered many things Robert had said.
John, in our line of work, you never know when you might meet your end.
I also understood why he had told me to write a farewell letter in advance. When disaster strikes, there might not even be time for that. John heard a faint voice calling his name.
John.
Was that Sarah's voice again? Was he hearing things? No, it shouldn't be.
Sarah, I'm here.
As soon as he spoke, he felt someone grab his hand, pulling him upwards. It was Sarah. It really was her. Once they reached the surface, John rested for a while.
Sarah, how did you know I was in trouble?
Sarah pulled out a broken jade pendant from her pocket.
It told me. Unfortunately, after these 2 incidents, it's broken. I won't be able to use it to help you anymore. From now on, you'll have to walk your own path.
What about Emily? Where is she?
Sarah told him that when they arrived, Emily was already gone. No one knew where she had run off to.
John, have you noticed anything unusual about Emily lately?
John thought for a moment but couldn't recall anything specific. Just a few days ago, she had asked him for a few $1,000s, saying she wanted to visit her hometown.
There have been many cases of insurance fraud involving harm recently. You should be careful.
Sarah's words seemed to alert him. When he got home, John went to the local insurance company. He found out that he had an accident insurance policy.
I wasn't surprised by this. Since my last incident, Emily had helped me buy an insurance policy. But when I saw that Emily was the beneficiary, I understood.
The staff looked at him with a surprised expression.
Are you John Smith?
Yes, I am John Smith.
Aren't you supposed to be deceased?
John was shocked by her words. How could he be deceased? He was very much alive. The staff showed him his death certificate. Seeing it, John realized a while ago, Emily had secretly reported his death. There were even photos of the body. Looking at the photo, he understood. The person in the photo was the father Emily had mentioned. Back then, it wasn't as advanced as it is now with all the smartphones and cameras. It was very easy to get a death certificate. There was no DNA comparison. John explained his situation, and the staff immediately called the police. After that, he went back home. Without a partner, John stopped taking jobs. The money he had earned over the years was enough to live on. One day, just after he had finished eating, Sarah hurriedly came to find him.
John, Robert is not doing well.
Hearing her words, John rushed to Robert's side. Sarah told him that after breakfast, Robert felt a bit tired and went to lie down. Who knew it would turn out like this?
Robert, what's wrong?
Since the last time Robert helped John resolve his karma, his health had been declining day by day. But John knew Robert had taken on that karma for him. He exchanged his own life for John's safety. Robert had no children of his own, but he treated John like his own son.
John, I might not make it. After I'm gone, you must take good care of Sarah. She's the only one I can't stop worrying about. Sarah has suffered with me all her life, never having a day of comfort.
Robert, you know I'll look after her.
I never told you this. Sarah was an abandoned baby I found while working as a water ghost. At that time, I was just 28, and she was only 2. Now, more than 20 years have passed. She deserves to live.
Robert didn't say another word before he took his last breath.
Sarah saved my life twice, and I will take care of her for the rest of my life. I can never repay her kindness.
When Robert passed away, Sarah was devastated. She had endured so much hardship with him without ever complaining.
I bought a very nice burial plot for Robert. He didn't enjoy much in life, so he should at least rest well in death.
One day, Sarah and John went to the market to buy groceries. Suddenly, they saw some uniformed officers chasing a woman.
Isn't that Emily?
Emily? The one who almost got me hurt?
John quickly ran after her. He wouldn't let her get away. Eventually, she collapsed from exhaustion. When she saw John, she looked utterly shocked.
You're not gone?
How could I be gone? Emily, why did you want me out of the picture?
John never understood why she wanted to harm him.
Because you caused my father's death.
How is that possible? Your father died from overwork. What does that have to do with me?
No, it's because you didn't die that my father did.
Do you remember getting sick after you went down the well?
If you had passed away, the cycle would have ended. But your master saved you, transferring your fate to my father. The burden of being a water ghost never disappears. It just shifts from one person to another.
Hearing Emily's words, John became even more convinced that Robert had saved him by transferring his fate to himself. But he didn't believe he was responsible for her father's death.
Emily, your father died from overwork.
No, it was your fault.
No matter what John said, she wouldn't believe him. Perhaps being a water ghost for so long had affected her mind. Even as she was taken away, she still believed John was responsible for her father's death. Sarah witnessed the entire scene. On the way back, John held Sarah's hand. Her hand was small and delicate. It was the first time he had held her hand. He had wanted to do it many times before, but never had the courage.
John, the water ghost profession is a dying trade. With the constant updates in equipment, it will eventually disappear.
You're right. It's already hard to find work on construction sites.
John never disagreed with Sarah, especially after Robert passed away. The trade Robert passed down might end with John. He might be the last water ghost on the construction site, but perhaps that's for the best, as it means less danger.
John, don't call me Sarah anymore.
But I was already used to it.
Your master always treated me like a daughter, hoping I would marry a good man and have someone to take care of me in old age.
John understood Sarah's meaning. She wanted him to feel at ease. They had never lived together whenever John visited Sarah's home.
Sarah, I'm used to it. It's hard to change.
Suit yourself. I have a name, it's Grace.
Sarah smiled and continued.
John, I've enrolled you in a self-study course. Brush up on your studies and get a bachelor's degree. It might be useful for you in the future.
Encouraged by Sarah, John studied at night and worked on the construction site during the day. Having spent so much time on the site, he could solve most problems. After 4 years, he graduated with a bachelor's degree. Then, the engineering projects underwent reforms, implementing a project manager registration system. To register, one needed to pass the first-level constructor exam. With the introduction of supervision, the quality of engineering improved, and the water ghost role disappeared from construction sites. Fortunately, Sarah had foresight. John was among the first to benefit from the registration system because he had a bachelor's degree, qualifying him to take the constructor exam. Through hard work, he passed the first-level constructor exam, aligning with national policy reforms and becoming one of the first certified professionals. He finally became a true engineer. Every year, John visits Robert's grave, burns some paper offerings, and talks to him, telling him that Sarah is doing well. He has never forgotten his wishes. Now he has taken on many engineering projects, but he has never forgotten his time as a water ghost. He always wears the jade pendant around his neck and keeps Robert's teachings close to his heart.